It is a beautiful summer day in the Lehigh Valley. Lots of sunshine out there today, but perhaps sometimes as the calendar changes, your mood can change and seasonal stress can kick in. And that's a conversation that we're going to have today on the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It is brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation. You can get more information at stlukespennfoundation.org. As always, joined by my partner in crime, Amie Allanson Dundon. Amie, are we enjoying the sunshine we've got so far today, my friend?
I am enjoying the sunshine today. It's a nice start to the summer, and I'm looking forward to warmer weather and the discussion today about really mental health and seasons and the summer in particular and things that we kind of take for granted sometimes. So I am enjoying things. I'm excited to kick off the summer.
Excellent. And we have a wonderful guest to join us in our conversation about seasonal stress and the science behind summer burnout. Dr. Peter Cloney. He's a psychiatry resident at St. Luke's Health Network. Dr. Cloney, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. Also enjoying the sunshine, I hope.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My garden is probably liking it more than me right now, though.
I'm sure. Get the sprinklers on. It's been a little hot. So Dr. Cloney, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. I think one of the first things that I think of as a parent is we get ready to go into the summer, and immediately as a kid, you're thinking summertime, woo, we're ready to go. As a parent, my first thought is, holy cow, we got a lot of hours to fill this summer. Of course, we'll talk about the kiddos and the parents in this scenario, but how do you distinguish between anxiety, burnout, and seasonal mood changes?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, I feel like there's so much overlap, and oftentimes, we love to put things in boxes, but there's so many times where things overlap, right? I mean, I think the biggest thing that we notice with seasonal patterns is that they're seasonal, right? They tend to get better or worse with the seasons. Whereas burnout, that tends to be more insidious, kind of creep up on you a little bit slower. Usually there's work stressors, caregiver burnout is especially real. And then, just day-to-day anxiety, I think, is a normal human emotion, but when it becomes more problematic, it's taking up a lot more of that headspace. That's a little different. That's usually not seasonal, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes in the summer we tend to overwhelm ourselves with anticipatory expectation of it's summer. So I should be, there's the should, must, and have to that I come back all the time to on this podcast, but I should be setting up an excellent summer schedule for my family. I should have 6 camps lined up. I should have vacations planned. And this pressure to provide a summer experience that society really has come to expect. And if you look on social media, people are posting their vacation pictures. And the reality is, I think sometimes we create our own anxiety by expecting too much of ourselves because it's summer.
Yeah, there's sort of, we romanticize, I think, the time off from school for both the kids and ourselves. We try and, cram pack everything into our time off, and it ends up flying by faster than you realize. And lo and behold, you didn't enjoy a lot of the time that you had. I feel like especially with kiddos, them being home from school, getting outside and spending that time, outside with friends is so important too. There doesn't always need to be an itinerary for everything.
Right.
You would call that what? Shooting all over yourself?
Yes, I would. That's exactly what I would call that. Right. It's irrational and it gets us into trouble. And, the other piece of it is that, let's face it, right now when we're filming this podcast, there's a lot of folks with the price of gas and with finances, the way that they are right now. Some people this year aren't going to be able to go on a vacation or aren't going to be able to take the multitude of road trips that they're used to taking. And that's okay. Right? So I think it's giving yourself permission to enjoy every day without it being planned out and elaborate or expensive.
I think one of those things that maybe we don't focus on so much, but as you say, you're planning out your day. Days are longer in the summer. That sun's setting late. So a lot of times, especially now, maybe you're just getting ready to wrap up dinner and you're looking down and you're like, what do you mean it's only 6 o'clock? We still got a lot of sunlight left.
Sounds like a dad with a lot of kids. Sounds like a dad with a lot of kids. Like, God, there's a lot of sunlight.
Of little league practices and flag football games and hockey games and all that stuff. Dr. Cloney, can heat, longer daylight hours, or changes in routine contribute to anxiety or burnout?
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you right now, I run hot. As you can probably tell, I'm like very hot. That makes me anxious. I know that makes other people anxious, right? But certainly, something that we don't really discuss a whole lot, there's actual biologic backgrounds for a lot of our mood symptoms that are related to seasonal patterns, right? So we know, for example, the cones and rods and people with bipolar disorder are more sensitive to light changes. So we tend to see seasonal patterns. Yeah, exactly. I think when we look sort of at changes in structure in general, that's a stressor for people. You're kind of going against the norm, right? When you have these big changes, whether it's, you're no longer getting the kids ready for school in the morning, so your day looks a little bit different, whatever it is, that structure, or I guess the change in structure, that definitely brings on anxiety for a lot of people. Even kids. Kids notice it too.
Yeah, and I think there's a biological component also to daylight. And I think if you're already kind of at a low buzz anxiety or depression to begin with, the pressures of where am I going to find daycare for my kids, and how am I going to work from home? Maybe I work from home and have all my kids at home and perform to the best of my ability. And so if you combined to Dr. Cloney's point, the rods and cones and how our eyes adjust to summer, super interesting biology there. But then also the daylight and the amount of sleep you're getting, and the change in schedule might be better, might be less stressful on paper, but it's a change, right? So all of that combined with dopamine and serotonin and the things that we talk about all the time on this podcast can really affect your ability to cope with heat, with daylight, with different pressures, with childcare. I asked somebody the other day what their favorite part of summer was, and they said not having to pack school lunches. It wasn't like, so it was that it's so stressful for them to pack, if they have 3 or 4 kids and spouses, to get all that meal prep done. Sometimes appreciate the little things and take advantage of those and try to focus on those.
I've heard the converse too, where people that might have more food scarcity or insecurity, they worry, hey, my kid's getting free or reduced lunch maybe at school and breakfast perhaps, and now you're prepping 3 meals instead of, what you were doing before. So it's so context based too, I think. We try to put things again in boxes, but there's so many confounding factors here, right? How are the financial stressors over the summer for people as well? Like you said, gas prices are going up, groceries have been going up, and that's certainly something that I think people feel more in the summer when they're trying to cook out more and, enjoy the sun.
I think one of those things that kind of comes with that when you mentioned cooking out in the summer and doing those sorts of things, maybe some of the social elements, the social expectations that might be there for somebody in the summer when you're talking about graduation parties. We've already mentioned events. There's all sorts of different things going on. Amie, I'm going to come to you on this one. Just kind of the general impact on mental health in the summer as those social expectations kind of probably for a lot of people are ramping up since there's so much more time home with the family or the kids or whoever it may be, and all of the, I hate to use the word commitments because, you can make the decisions you want to make if an event is worth, kind of your mental health or not. But the social expectations that come with this time of year a little bit and how it plays a role in your mental health.
Yeah, I think it's similar to the holiday season. I think both of them are pretty similar, where the expectation is there for you to go to the graduation party, go to the summer picnic, go to the barbecue, or even host it, depending on your family and your friends. So I think it's no different than the rest of the year when I would say to people, no is a sentence, right? So you can say, I'm not doing that this week, or I'm not hosting that. I can't do that. And because I feel overwhelmed, and adding that to my plate is going to push me to an edge I don't want to go to just with my anxiety or my depression. So I think summer's not necessarily different than the rest of the year. I think in terms of mental health, if you struggle with mental health issues, depending on what they are and how you cope during the rest of the year, that's how your summer will go. So you really have to set yourself up for success and know yourself. Like Dr. Cloney, he knows he runs hot, right? So if it's 95 degrees out, he's going to set himself up for success that day and make sure that he's not hosting a barbecue for 100 people outside. So you've got to know yourself and give yourself permission to cope ahead. Right?
Oh, I like that. Cope ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And understand what level of buzz your anxiety is at all year and how you're going to adjust that during the summer, just like I would say to do during the holidays. If there are barbecues or picnics that there's going to be people at that push your buttons or are drivers of your anxiety, then you can make a choice to go late and leave early. If you can set it up however you want. Summer's no different.
It's a good time, I think, also to practice some boundary setting, even with yourself, like you mentioned, with the social media. We're looking at curated images of people's summer and their vacations, right? That's not what reality is. That's a snapshot. Yeah.
Yeah. Reality is me sending Dr. Cloney pictures of my dead flowers and him sending me pictures of his live flowers, and me not trying to
inside
stress.
Of his house in front of a fan.
Right,
right. Cool. This is what he's doing there. Yes, of course. I kind of want to come back kind of off script here a little bit, because I think for a lot of people, and I'm just curious on your opinions on this, because you obviously see so much more than I would. When I think of the idea of like seasonal depression, I think of a time where, perhaps the clock is setting earlier and the day is darker earlier, and perhaps some of those commitments, you get to the holiday season and maybe you're missing some family at the holiday season, or you don't want to see some family at the holiday season. I not to make one more stressful than the other, but Amie, I kind of found it fascinating, the element that you put into it of that. I guess to me, maybe as you're thinking in more of a family element, that the winter change and the holiday season and all of those things maybe are feel a little bit more daunting than perhaps in the summer, but we're kind of looking at whatever you kind of said, like wherever your mood is, probably around then, that same thing can kind of happen to you this time of year as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's not different, really. It's just sunnier. There's more daylight, right? So in the winter, it's darker, and we tend to kind of naturally go into our caves. And the summer, we're expected not to, because the sun's out. So I think it's perspective. Honestly, I don't know, in terms of seasonal affective disorder, we don't have a seasonal affective disorder for the summer, unless I'm incorrect, Dr. Cloney.
Not in particular. I mean, but I think it's something that's really definitive for seasonal affective disorder is not so much the specific season that it happens, but that it does have a cyclical pattern that's in line with the season. So, for example, I've absolutely had patients that have seasonal kind of symptoms in the spring, when the clock's spring forward, right?
Fall back.
And we're getting more daylight, but perhaps there's other things going on. Maybe it's around the anniversary of a death of a loved one, or other kind of things that maybe don't bring such great memories for the season.
Sure. And I've got to think that sleep disruption can be a big part of that. If you're, as a parent trying to get two kids to sleep, hey, this is our normal bedtime. I don't care if you can still see the sun coming through the window. I assure you, it's 8:30. Get your jams on. It's time to go and get settled in. Dr. Cloney, I'm going to come to you on this one. Could sleep disruptions from longer daylight be worsening symptoms for somebody in this situation?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Especially with anxiety. Sleep, whenever I talk to patients, and I think I've said this to you, Amie, there's really only 4 things, in my opinion, that you need to be a happy person. It's adequate sleep, adequate nutrition, some reason to get up in the morning, right? Some purpose, exactly, and some form of love in your life, whatever that looks like. If you have all four of those things, it's very difficult to be an unhappy person, but it starts with good sleep, I would say. Sleep hygiene is so important.
Yeah. And that in the summer, that can fall off because it is lighter longer, and
Yep.
we do push ourselves to stay up, or
Kids don't have school.
the kids don't have school, so you're extending their bedtime, and maybe if they're gamers, you give them more time with their friends on video games in the evening, or, I think it's really important to try to stick to a schedule even during the summer.
Yeah.
I like those 4 points. I think they're brilliant. I think that's very true. And what I would say is, even though one of the things we just talked about was boundaries and saying no, I think it's also important to stretch yourself sometimes and say yes when your anxiety or your summer anxiety or depression is telling you no. Sometimes it's important to go to that dinner, to go to that beach event that you were invited to that feels like it might be a hassle because it's your anxiety talking. Pushing yourself to spend time with family, unplugged, unconnected, disconnected from phones, TVs, and even if it's going out to dinner with people you normally wouldn't see and you get invited, do the thing. Push yourself a little bit. Because I think that's what you talked about, love, right? And purpose.
You have to foster that like a plant.
Right.
You got to grow it.
See? Right. So love doesn't doesn't have to be romantic love.
Right.
Right. Love can be love of a good friend, love of a family member, love of a coworker.
Pets, all that.
Pets, unconditional love. Yeah.
I actually want to jump in. My next question is going to be about, we had mentioned nutrition. So Dr. Cloney, I want to talk to you about the role hydration, diet, and heat play in a person's mood and anxiety levels. I think as we also talk about diet, listen, the summertime, we talk about how we see everybody's Instagram posts and everything looks great. And maybe, man, they got that summer body going right now. Maybe something about you doesn't feel so secure about yourself in that way. So I just wanted to add that little element to that question there of what role does dehydration, diet, or heat play in your mood and anxiety levels? And in that whole thing, as we kind of talk about diet a little bit, if we don't mind pivoting a bit, just how that could play a role in your overall mood as summertime rolls around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the first things, kind of connecting as like a little segue, we were just talking about nutrition. One of the things I see oftentimes that interrupts people's sleep, they're eating too late at night, and that's really something that can throw off your sleep. And that does actually, that's a nutritional thing. But, in terms of kind of answering your original question, anytime the body undergoes any sort of insult, whether that's, aberrations to your electrolytes or whatever happens to be going on, you're sweating, all that kind of stuff, your body tries to correct, right? And so that's stress on the body. It's an insult to the body. That's going to have some kind of provoking effects. Now, not everybody's going to feel it as profoundly as another person, perhaps, but certainly it's something that if you're predisposed to anxiety, you're probably going to notice it more. For example, people that tend to run anxious tend to be pretty sensitive to caffeine. They tend to notice that. Same kind of concept. You're a little more sensitive perhaps to what's going on. And just staying adequately hydrated, I think, is so important, especially in this heat. We forget, our little ones and even our elderly loved ones, they get so dehydrated in this kind of weather, and it's so important.
Yeah, and I think setting a meal schedule, if you can, and sticking to it is super important to go along with that, so that you're not having caffeine after a certain time of day. You're not eating sugar after a certain time of day. Yesterday it got to be 4:00 in the afternoon, and I'm like, God, what is wrong with me? Like I'm feeling out of it. It was hot out, and when I left, like 4:30, left work, and I realized, well, you had Pepsi and pretzel nuggets today. That was it. I had because they're so good. The pretzel nuggets you dip in them. Well, right. That's what I had yesterday. Like the nuggets that you dip in those fantastic dipping sauces.
The Philly pretzel factory nuggets.
Right. Yeah. If you're not from the East Coast, you need to find yourself some Philly pretzels. But
she's right.
But so I'm like, okay, I caffeined and I sugared and I carbed that's what I did today.
Yeah.
I worked. So I was like, how do I have to reset myself? But it's so easy in the summertime.
It's so easy.
Because even at work, people are bringing in summer picnic leftovers and
Yes.
cupcakes and cakes. And,
Sure.
so it's important to remember to be balanced. But also to your earlier point, Dr. Cloney, sometimes there are families that don't have the finances to have 3 balanced meals a day in the summer. Because school is really where that happens.
Yeah.
So how can you take a look at the nutrition and the balance of that and make sure that throughout the day, everyone is getting a little bit of balance spread out through the day? Oftentimes your local hospitals have programs for summer meals for kids. I know St. Luke's does. I'm sure others do, where you can come in and get a lunch for your kiddos. So I would certainly urge anybody who's listening to give their local hospital and health networks a phone call and ask about their summer lunch programs
And
for
food
kids.
banks. 'Cause
And food banks.
They usually do like the backpack program over the summer still. I know I used to volunteer doing that
What
down
is
in
that?
Delaware. Well, kids would bring their backpack to like the food bank, and we would basically stuff them full of, goodies, things like that for them to take home for the week. That's certainly something that I'm sure is probably available as well. And, I'm a big proponent just of kind of rolling your sleeves up and getting your hands dirty. I think Amie knows that. I think getting the kids out into the garden and, even doing some cooking doesn't have to be anything fancy, something easy that kids can help out with.
Yeah.
It gives them a sense of accomplishment, takes a little bit of the work off your load. There's actually new literature that shows getting some of the soil under your fingernails is good for your mental health, believe it or not. So there you go.
We just talked about touching dirt in one of our recent podcasts at the end. We're like, go
love
outside,
that.
touch the grass, touch dirt.
It's a multisensory experience. That's how we ground children on, when they're having a meltdown. We do the 5, 4,
Right.
3, 2, 1. Those
Yeah.
multisensory experiences are so good for our anxiety.
Can you explain 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to people that don't know?
Yeah, so essentially, a lot of times what we see, it's very easy, obviously, for kids to get very overstimulated or overwhelmed.
Or
anxious, Or adults, right? This is not a child-only problem. But what we do with the kiddos...
not us.
No, right?
No,
Yeah.
we're good.
What we do with the
Yeah.
kiddos, we do something called a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it just runs down the different senses. So you tell them, tell me 5 things in the room that are blue. Tell me 4 things you can hear right now. 3 things you can touch. 2 things you can smell. And then if you have something, 1 thing you taste. And
Piece of gum, anything.
yeah, and it's really just meant to kind of recenter yourself. It's sort of hacking your brain, because by focusing on those sensory experiences, kind of lowers that heightened activity level. And it really works.
It does really work.
And being in the garden is a great way to kind of stimulate that for adults and kiddos.
That's amazing. That's actually a really good thought. Amie, I want to come back to you because one of the things that you had alluded to a little bit ago was kind of encouraging yourself to participate in things this summer. You said even if it's a situation where you go late, leave early, kind of give yourself the opportunity to get out and maybe push yourself a little bit. You don't want to go too far, but certainly push yourself a little bit. What are some ways to manage anxiety when I feel pressure to enjoy summer?
So I think number 1 would be to talk to the people around you who you trust and tell them how you're feeling. Verbalize it, because if we let the negative self-talk or the anxious self-talk live in our head, it just gets bigger and louder. So say it out loud to somebody you trust. That's just talking about it will help, right? Just start the conversation. I think one of the other things that you can do is journal. I think summer's a good time if you aren't a journaler or you say, yeah, I don't like to write. Summer's a really good time to reset and keep a summer journal. Maybe a sentence or 2 about gratitude in the morning, maybe a sentence or 2 in the evening about things that were really helpful or good that day. Trying not to focus a journal on negatives or catastrophizing or things of that nature. I think resetting yourself in the positive is always a good way to help to alleviate some anxiety. What was one good thing about today, right? Even if it was a really anxious day, what was one good thing about today, right?
I love that too with the gratitude, because I think just by starting your day on a positive note, you're changing your sort of cognitive frame, right? So you're going to be looking for more positive things. It's confirmation bias, right? So that's what we're going to be looking. I love that, starting the day with something like that.
Yeah.
For me, it's my coffee.
The coffee is your gratitude. You're
Yeah.
you're grateful for
I
coffee.
just sit in my house and I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful, you know.
You're
Well,
easy to
especially
please.
because if you don't have that cup of coffee, then you immediately know, all right, this is a different kind of day I got ahead of me
everybody
right
would
now.
know.
So you really want to be
Everybody knows when Dr. Cloney doesn't have coffee.
That's awesome. Dr. Cloney, I want to come back to a phrase that Amie had said that caught your attention that you liked, and that was cope ahead. Cope ahead was a phrase that she used earlier. So as I
love that.
plan my schedule and I perhaps look to maybe do things differently, whether that be vacations or workload, to protect my mental health, how can I kind of go about doing it? You know, Amie said to you, like, if last summer you hosted a barbecue for 100 people and you don't particularly love being out there in the heat, all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, well, there's an expectation for me to maybe have that barbecue again, but I don't really want to do that sort of thing. Should I plan my schedule differently to protect my mental health this summer?
You know, I think the idea with the coping ahead, I like that because it sort of gives yourself permission to give yourself a little bit of grace. You know, and what I mean by that, I say this to patients all the time. We have this tendency to sit down and think that we need to, whether it's completing a task, that we need to sit down and do it 100% all the way and you know, finish it and wrap it up nicely and everything should be perfect. And the reality is we don't have to do that. You can do part way things, right? Maybe instead of having a barbecue with 100 people outside, you have 50 people and it's inside because it's hot out. And you tell your friends, I'm too hot to be outside. But the other thing too, you know, I think with coping ahead, you're sort of allowing yourself that room to grow, right? A little bit of discomfort is a sign of growth. Challenging yourself, like you said, to go to these things, that is a sign of personal growth.
Very true.
Going on a podcast that you've never
Personal
been on
growth.
before.
Right. Pushing each other, pushing your family to cope ahead. So don't just think about it as, what do I have to do to cope ahead? Who do the people in my immediate circle, you know, how can I help them think about coping ahead differently? If you have a kiddo who's really scared to go to summer camp, right? And they don't, it's the first time maybe they're going to a sleepaway camp. How can you help them cope ahead? If you know they're leaving on July 4th, then what are we doing? What's our plan every day to help them cope ahead and to help them set them up for success before they leave? So if you're going on a family vacation for a week, try to set your family up for success and get all the tasks done, not the day of, that to prep for that. You know, write out a meal plan. What are you going to take? What are you going to make? Who's going to bring what? Ask others to help. That's coping ahead.
Ask others to help. That's a big one.
Yeah.
We're trying to do that for you today, I think, a little bit, right? With this conversation that we've had on the Just Start the Conversation podcast. A couple of things that I really wanted to hit on, two major points before we wrap this thing up. The summer programs for kids, that local hospitals, we mentioned food banks for people who are dealing with food insecurity this summer. Two excellent resources there to go ahead and check out. Obviously, I'm sure for parents in particular, that is a huge part of what could be a role of a mental health load that you're dealing with in the summer. So again, want to mention local hospitals, St. Luke's, food banks that we have in and around our area or your area, wherever it is that you're listening. Please go ahead and check those out. The other was shooting all over myself should be printed as t-shirts.
Thanks.
And we are missing out on a gold mine.
Agreed.
With that one. So we're that's patent pending here.
TM, isn't that what you have to say? TM.
Yeah.
Yes, we're trademarking
Verbal
that. We got
contract.
the audio. Dr. Peter Cloney is a psychiatry resident at St. Luke's. Dr. Cloney, thank you so much for joining us today. Great insight. We certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
As always, Amie, thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I just want to congratulate Dr. Cloney. He's a resident today, but in a few weeks, he will be graduating and is joining us as a full-time attending psychiatrist. So he's only a resident for a few more weeks. And I just want to say we're really blessed and grateful to have him joining our team.
Oh,
that's amazing.
Thanks,
well, congratulations to you, Dr. Cloney. That's very awesome. So congrats to you. Come join us anytime. We certainly would appreciate you anytime, my friend. So thank you. It is the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It is brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation. You can get this podcast at stlukespennfoundation.org and wherever you get your podcasts. For Dr. Peter Cloney, for Amie Allanson Dundon, I'm Kevin Crockett. Thanks so much for joining us for the Just Start the Conversation podcast.